Well, good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody this morning. My name is Brian. I am the lead pastor here at Crossroads, and I just want to welcome you. Just so glad that you're with us here. And again, Pastor Jim had mentioned, but our mission statement is that we exist to lead everyone to discover Jesus and follow him fully. So we want to help you take your next step with that. I want you to discover who Jesus is, follow him fully with your life, and then ultimately lead others to do the very same thing. So again, how we can help you do that, let us know. Also, Crossroads Online, welcome to you. Love our online campus. Hope you guys are doing well wherever you're at. And don't forget, chat hosts are going to be sending some stuff your way, links and different things like that. Connect with them and make sure that you know that they're there to pray for you. But guys, next weekend, I am just stoked about next weekend. It is going to be a great opportunity because if you haven't heard, we are going to have Daryl Strawberry here as our special guest. It is going to be an awesome weekend. And if you haven't heard about it, if you're not sure kind of what we're going after, I want to show you this little video so you have an idea what next week's going to be all about. Take a look.
I was an 8-time All-Star, 4-time World Series champ. After my rookie year, I signed an $8 million contract at the age of 22. And I go play 8 more years in the big leagues in New York, win a championship in '86, gain everything, millions of dollars, but I had nothing. My pain led me to my greatness. It was the pain of my father, of the beatings and the alcoholism that led me to my greatness. And my greatness led me to self-destructive. Because I had everything, but I had nothing. My life has been transformed and changed, and can you imagine that a guy comes out of high school, he becomes a millionaire, he plays sports, and then he goes through all these trials and tribulations in his life, and then God comes, and everybody writes me off and says he's a bum, and Jesus comes and says, I want him. I'm going to use him. If you don't know Jesus, you need to get to know him while you're here. Because he's amazing. And there's no one like him.
So I'm stoked. Next week, we're going to have Daryl Strawberry, all six of him and all 5 of me. We're going to be up here. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be amazing. But I would tell you this is an easy and great opportunity for you to invite your one to church. Now, that one, as we talk a lot about that, one is that one person in your life that God's placed in your life to be able to have a conversation with about Christ, to invite to church, to come alongside. But we would love for you to invite your one, and maybe some other people as well, to be able to be a part of that. Now, I want to make sure you know probably 11:30 and 8:30 service are going to be the safe zones when it comes to attending. So make sure you're here early, get your spot, because I believe it's going to be really packed out. But I'm anxious to hear what God's going to do through the life of Daryl Strawberry. Going to be really cool. But I'll tell you this, we are in the last week of our series, which is called Priorities. And it's this series where we've been trying to figure out how do we prioritize our life? Because there are all kinds of demands that are placed on us on a daily basis. Every day, someone, something is after or wants a piece of our time and our attention. And we always ask ourselves, well, what's the right way to prioritize this? How do I put it in the right order? And as you look in the Bible, there's actually a rhythm that God gives us that's outlined to be able to follow his way that brings us the most joy and meaning and passion in our life. And we call that the pyramid of priorities here. So if you haven't been around, you're not sure what we're talking about, let me put everybody up on the same page so you can kind of talk from the very beginning. And I'm going to start at the bottom of the pyramid and work my way up because I have the mic and you don't. So this is how we're going to work it, okay? So the first thing we're going to look at is the bottom of the pyramid, which is everything else. Everything else. Now, in the everything else section of the pyramid, it's the junk drawer. That could have your hobbies, your passions, your job, things, your extended family. All that stuff can fall in the everything else area. And you can order it within that drawer. You can order it however you want to. But ultimately, that drawer needs to be the 4th most important thing in our life next to these top 3. Now, right above our everything else should be our kids. And our kids come in at number 3 because we love them, we care for them, we want them to do great things in this world, but we want to make sure that they don't become idols or gods in our life, that they don't overtake the most important things in our life. And so we place them above our everything else, but they do fall second to our spouse. That our spouse should be the 2nd most important relationship in your life. That when you say yes and you say I do to your husband or wife, you are gluing yourself together until death do you part, but you want to make sure that they don't become higher than your top priority, which is God. that we believe that it is God, spouse, kids, and everything else. God should be the number one thing in our life. Under that should be our spouse, then our kids, then everything else. And the reason being is that if we start to get things out of order, things get all kinds of jacked up. If our spouse gets above God, what we've done is we've said, okay, spouse, you're now my God. And so I'm going to place God-sized weight onto you, so you need to fulfill all of my expectations, all my worries. You need to be there for me, do everything for me, all of that. You need to be my God. But what happens is we forget that they're human, that they will fail us, and when that happens, if we place them on that pedestal, they fall from grace, and we get frustrated. But God says, don't put them number one, put me number one, and everything else falls in place. That if you love me, you can put your God-sized expectations and weight onto me, and your spouse can be your spouse, your kids can be your kids, and everything else can be everything else. So if you missed any of those, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to those. You can go on the web to be able to find those, have that free Crossroads Grace app that you can download, or you can also go on any podcast and you can listen to those. But I think it'd be very, very helpful for you to understand the full pyramid of priorities and what God is trying to say. But before I get into today's message and I kind of dive into this final week, I just want to be really transparent with you today as we begin. And I tell you this because I had one of those really, really long weeks last week that maybe you have from time to time too. That from the moment I said, tag, you're it last week, to the moment that I'm standing here today, I felt like what was left of the stubble of my hair was on fire the whole week, okay? Like we were talking, it was crazy. And I'll say that none of the busyness that I was going through were bad things. It wasn't like I was getting a root canal, had jury duty, and had to go to the DMV for 7 hours. It wasn't any of those things. It was just life. It's a great life filled with great things that I've chosen to be a part of my life. Last week we had a great board of trustees meeting here at the church. I had a Modesto Gospel Mission board meeting on Monday. Was watching baseball games, coaching baseball games, planning for summer baseball, summer club volleyball and beach volleyball, along with dance rehearsals for my daughter, end of the year school projects for the kids, a worship rehearsal for next Thursday for the worship night, staff meetings, future church vision planning, sermon writing, even doing some radio spot writing for a radio station that I do some work for. Oh, and by the way, working out every day, trying to eat healthy, taking care of my house, being a dad, being a husband, and trying to love Jesus all at the same time, right? Anybody been there? Right? You just understand that. But about halfway through Monday, one day into this week, my head started spinning, and I was about 3/4 of the way to a full-blown migraine that would have wiped me out. And I felt like I was doing a bunch of good things that I love, but I also felt like I wasn't doing any of them at the best that I could. I wasn't being the best at any one of them. Have you ever felt this way before? Right? It's just crazy. And I'll tell you, it was hard. And it was even harder because I'm the pastor preaching on how to keep the right priorities in your life. How flippity-flip messed up is that? You know, I'm the guy. And I'll tell you this, that Satan, he played some tricks on me this week. He said all kinds of stuff to me. He says, you're a hypocrite. How can you tell other people to do this and you're a hot mess? He says, if you're failing your kids, they're going to hate you later in life. You're a failure as a husband. You only see your wife 1 hour a day, and you think that's being a good husband? You're a terrible coach. I mean, those boys, they deserve better than what you're able to offer them. And I'm telling you, on and on and on it went. It just seemed to be unrelenting for a few days there. I'll just be honest. It was tiring. And so I tell you all of that, not so you'll feel sorry for me, because I'm good. I'm all right. But I say that to you because I've been struggling with this series right along with you. I've had to look at my life and analyze it too. And you might not know this, but usually when I preach, I'm just preaching to myself and y'all just happen to be in the room. Like that's just how it is. And I got to do it 4 times to get through this 6th skull. So listen, I get it. But I'll tell you, this has hit me hard. It's hit me hard. But as I was processing through this week, I ran into some important words in the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew chapter 7 to be exact. So if you have those Crossroads Grace apps or your Bibles with you today, Matthew 7 is where we're going to be at. Crossroads Online, those chat hosts are going to put that in there for you right now, those verses that you'll need for this series. But the Gospel of Matthew, you should know, was written by one of Jesus' disciples whose name was Matthew. Yeah. And Matthew's Gospel, they're not very creative when they name Bible. Right? So Matthew's Gospel was written to a very specific audience, and that was Jewish Christians. And these were men and women that had heard a lot of scripture, had even memorized a lot of scripture, and they were doing their best to follow the laws of God to the T. But Jesus comes on the scene. And when Jesus comes on the scene, he has these new expectations for these men and women. And Matthew wanted to make sure that he highlighted this portion of Jesus' teachings so that it would prick their heart to maybe have them think a little bit differently than they do right now. And this is where we jump in at Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 24. Jesus says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice. Now, if I stop right there just for a second, I'm not sure if we really grasp what Jesus is saying here sometimes. Because I know, and I would venture to guess that you know, a lot of Christians that are really good at hearing the words of Jesus. You know what I mean? Like they come to church, that they know all the right things to say. They might even have a couple of Bible verses tucked in their back pocket that they've memorized, and they could tell you at a moment's notice. But the problem is that Jesus doesn't stop at just hearing the word, did he? He actually says that you need to put them into practice. Put them into practice. It's the tag your it moment for Jesus. It's the what are you going to do with what you just heard moment. And I love that James, who by the way is Jesus' brother, he writes the book of James. Again, we're not really creative when it comes to naming the books of the Bible, right? So James says these interesting words, and it's almost as if he was taking notes when Jesus was talking in Matthew 7. Because what we read in James 1, starting in verse 22, is James says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they've heard, but doing it, they will be blessed. So both Jesus and James, what they're trying to tell us is that it's not enough just to listen to what Jesus says. It's not enough to simply call yourself a Christian. Because I would argue that it's a great place. Calling yourself a Christian is a great place to start. It is a terrible place to end up. Because what's more important is moving from hearing Jesus to following Jesus, what he says. It's what's called being a disciple of Jesus. And this means that we place our full trust in him and we do what he tells us to do because we know that he loves us. And when we do that, Jesus actually says some things are going to happen. And here's what we read. Again, it says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundations on the rock. Jesus says that when we move from hearing to following, we've begun to build our homes on the rock, which is him. It's when we are choosing God's spouse, kids, and everything else in our life, and we start to follow him fully in our life, that we've gained the stability that our lives need, that we are found on the rock. But Jesus also says something. He also says that there's an alternative way to live this life if you choose not to do it the way that he wants. And he begins to spell that out in verse 26. And he says, but everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice. Now, I'll tell you this, that if you are a parent, you know exactly what Jesus is talking about right here today. Okay, online, I know what you know. See, I know that my daughter Aniston and my son Easton, they hear me when I talk to them. Why? Multiple doctors have confirmed that their ears are just fine, right? But those blank stares that you get sometimes make you wonder. Because right after I tell my super smart, crazy, attentive, bright, athletic, Jesus-loving kids to do something, they don't do it. And they'll do the exact opposite of what we're saying. And Cherie and I, it's like we go back in the bunker and we're like, okay, what in the world just happened there? You know, we got to get back in the war, but they're not doing what we said. You know, am I the only parent that their kids don't listen to? That's fine. That's all right, right? Right, but I'll tell you that this is where we're a lot like this. This is actually where a lot of us are right now spiritually, that we will hear what Jesus says, but we won't do what he tells us to do. That we know that these are our priorities and what he wants us to do, but I'll tell you what, we're having a hard time actually applying these to our life. So with this in mind, Jesus goes on to tell us that here's the results of when you make that choice in your life. He says, I'll read it again, but everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. Jesus says that when we choose to build our life on the rock, not on the rock, I should say, that we are destined for chaos and pain and destruction. It will. That there is this chaos that happens in our life when we choose not to obey him, and all of a sudden we feel like our feet are on unsettled ground, on sand. And I love the fact that Jesus doesn't talk about just ourselves, like that we have to have our personal own foundation, but he says that it's for your entire house. Because if you're married and you have kids, you should know that your house includes more than just you. It's everyone that God has entrusted to you that makes up your entire house. It's everyone. And Jesus is saying that we need to hear him and then obey him, not just for ourselves, but for our entire home. That we need our entire home to be set on the rock. So that means this, and he wants that because when the waves of life come, and they will come, by the way, whether you're single or you're married, are happily married, unhappily married, whether you have kids or not have kids, trials are going to come. Waves are going to come, and we have to have a foundation that can withstand that, because if we don't, it will collapse underneath the weight of whatever comes at us. And I will tell you that the foundation God wants for us is built off the grace, the love, and the truth of none other than Jesus Christ. But we will never be able to do that, never be able to have that until we follow Jesus and we apply what he tells us to do. It's the only way. So here's what I want us to do today. To finish out this series, this priority series, I want to answer a question that I think a lot of people probably have asked themselves as they started to hear this series so far. That after we hear God say that here's what I want you to have God for a spouse, kids, and everything else. Once we hear that, and maybe over the past few weeks, you've been convinced that makes a whole lot of sense. And you want to start to live your life this way, it's then that this natural question comes up. And the question is, how do I do that? Like, how can I tell if my priorities are in the right rhythm? Because without a guide, it can be hard to know what you're doing. But with a guide, you can know that the decisions you're making are clearer because you're filtering them through God and a bit of a guide. So what I want to do is I want to present to you today a guide, a way of checking your foundation, a way of practically putting this pyramid of priorities into action so that on a daily basis you have handles to know whether or not you're living on the rock of Jesus or not. So here's what I want to do. I want to take this pyramid, okay, and I want to create something out of it. And what I want to create is something I'm calling the priority frame. The priority frame, okay? I want us to put together a very highly practical way of putting these priorities in a way so that you can understand if you're on the rock of Jesus. And what it'll do is it'll help us know if we're actually doing something with what he's told us to do. So let me explain what this is, okay? I want you to pretend that on this frame, you're going to take these priorities, and I want you to put in here as though these become part of the frame. They become part of the edges of the frame. I realized when I was doing this, though, that I actually need to explain what a frame is, because I'm not sure if people really know anymore, because most of your pictures are on your phone, and you never actually do anything with them. Or anybody else have 40,000 pictures and have never, right? Okay, so here's what a picture frame is. A picture frame is when you do print that out, you can put it in this nice decorative thing with a piece of glass that protects it and hang it on your wall. And you probably will never take it down, but you're going to hang it on that wall for a little bit of time. And the way you do that is, let's say that you have a picture of like an 8x10 picture of your favorite French bulldog puppy named Drea. Like, maybe it's for me, okay? And so I go to the store, I find the area, and I find a frame that fits an 8x10 picture in it. Now, the frame itself, the outside, is usually made out of something fixed. So it might be plastic or metal or wood, but it definitely is hard. It's rigid so that it keeps that frame in its place. But the inside is meant to be for an 8x10 picture. So here's what I want us to do. I want us to create the frame by using the pyramid of priorities. So here's what I mean by that. Every side of the frame is going to get a label. So let's say the top part of the frame, we're going to label God. The side of this side is going to be our spouse. And then over here, we'll have this one be for our kids. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, put the everything else in the bottom. Hang tight. We're going to change it up just a little bit, because the final area of the frame that I want you to think about is you. So God, spouse, kids, and you. And you might say, hang on, time out, PB. You didn't have you anywhere in here. Well, actually, yeah. You are everywhere in here. You are part of everything. And if we want to think about our priorities, we need to be a bit of a priority mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. We need to think about us. And so I want you to consider it's God, spouse, kids, and you. That makes up your priority frame. But we're not done. What I want you now to think about, and this is great homework for you to do as a couple or engaged couple, or if you're married, or even if you're single, to think about how this might look for you, is I want you to think about the 3 things that you're doing in each one of these areas when you are at your very best, when you are killing it. Like, so for instance, like when you are so connected to God, what are the 3 things that you're doing? I'll give some examples. So maybe you might say, when I'm connected with God, I'm praying all the time. I have a great prayer life. Maybe the other thing that you notice is that you read your Bible all the time. Like you are connected in your Bible. And maybe the third thing that you do when you're connected with God is that you're in one of those growth groups that Pastor Jim talked about, that you're in community with other people. So like for me, this would be great. Like I'm praying, I'm reading my Bible, I'm connected in my growth group. That's when I know that I'm at my best with God. How about for your spouse? Let's go all around to all of them. Maybe for your spouse, maybe you have a date night, okay? Maybe you have a date night here that you go on. You make sure you stay connected with them. Number 2, maybe you go on a vacation without the kids. Wait, sorry, got stuck in there, right? You go on vacation without your kids, woo, okay? And you go on that vacation, okay? And maybe some other things, maybe for this, maybe you're in a couples growth group. Maybe you know that you're really connected when you're in a couples growth group. You're really diving in. Okay, well, how about with your kids? What about your family? Maybe you have dinner together, okay? Dinner together. Maybe another thing that you're doing, maybe you do go on vacation as a family. I don't know. Maybe you go here. I don't know, maybe, right? And then maybe here you find maybe that you're connected when you serve together and you do things together, you serve together, that you're at your best as a family. And then maybe for you, like I know for myself, like when I'm really in, like I'm eating well, I'm also exercising or I'm working out. I know that I'm most healthy when I'm doing that. And then the other thing is I'm also serving. Like I'm using my gifts to be able to help the kingdom and to do things, and using the gifts that God has given me. So what we've done here is that we've created the very best that we are. The priority frame is meant to be, this is when we're at our very best. So for me, when I'm best with God, I'm doing these 3 things. When I'm with my spouse, we're dating each other, we're going on vacation. When I'm with my kids, our families, with dinner and vacations together, right? And you go all the way around. But you have to decide what that is for you and understand that. And again, a great conversation as a couple. What are we doing together? What does this look like? And what this does is it gives you some framework for something very important. And because by now you're probably saying, all right, PB, what are you going to do with this bad boy, huh? You forgot the everything else, okay? You forgot the everything else. You forgot it, okay? Well, thanks for asking, because I love answering questions that I've already prepared for. So this is what we're going to do, right? We're going to talk about this. I did this on purpose. Because in our life, it's the everything else part of our life that we know that we have to make decisions on to figure out how they're going to fit in our life. Am I right? Like, remember last week we were talking about the everything else, kind of there's some things that might go in there. So for instance, let's kind of remind ourselves, like this is our everything else might be when our hobbies, our sports for our kids are in there. Maybe your job is going to be in everything else. Your extended family is there. Even little projects that you do around the house, like those are, all these things are meant. Now, these are good things. They're not bad things. They just are designed to be able to fit within, again, that 8x10 frame that we have got based on our priority frame that's around it. And these are always good things. But I'll tell you, all of these things are always trying to break your frame. They're always trying to break your frame. They all, tell me this is true. Don't all of these want all of your time, all of your attention, all of your resources? Like your everything else is your everything. It wants everything. But I'll tell you this, that if we don't know what our frame is made of, where our joy comes from, we can't make wise decisions about what we allow into our life and we don't allow into our life. And if we don't know what our priorities are, we haven't established those, can I tell you, this is what will inevitably happen. It will inevitably happen. I'll tell you what happens. Here's what happens. Let's take our sports, for instance, okay? When all of a sudden when sports it's a good thing, but let's say all of a sudden we decide we're going to kind of upgrade and we're going to start to do some crazy travel stuff and we're going to have 17 kids and 15 different sports and we're going all over the place and we're flying to the moon. There's a great competition up there, right? So like you have all of that going on. Or what about this one? This one, I'm sure maybe you've heard of this before. You've got a great job, things are going good, but then all of a sudden a new job opportunity comes up. And that new job opportunity is great, but it makes you travel more. It makes you away on the weekends. It makes you not get home in time. You make great money, but you're not going to see your family as much. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm going to try to put that in there. I've seen this too, that maybe you start off with a great project that's happening and you're in budget, you save for it, things are going great. But then the next thing you know, you just kind of go hog wild and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to start putting on the credit cards. We're going to do more stuff. You're in debt, all of this. And you've created it. And here's the thing. You have an 8x10 frame, but what happens when an 11x14 opportunity comes? What you do is you say, well, I don't want to give up on it, so you try to cram it in your frame, you try to move things around, you try to figure it out, you shrink your frame. And you say things like this. Well, we'll get used to it. It'll be a new rhythm, but it'll get better. Or how about this one? It's a great move for our family. It's more money, so it's got to be worth it. Or it's just a season, It's only for a little while, and that frame that we've kind of shrunk, it'll snap back into place. And you might be smiling right now because you've said that, heard that, or are currently doing that. But in our heart of hearts, we know it's never going to snap back. The frame will never be the same. And when that happens, here is what has to happen. Not might happen, has to happen when we do that. The reality is, some of these things that bring us so much joy, we are going to have to sacrifice at the altar of everything else. And so what happens? All of a sudden, you're like, because of all this stuff, well, goodness, I don't have time to be in a growth group anymore. I barely have time to read the Bible. I might pray when I'm on the way to work or when I'm really in trouble. Growth group, absolutely have no time for that. Date night is completely out. There's no way I've got time to do that. Vacation, maybe we'll see. We're definitely not going to serve together as a family, and definitely we don't have time for dinner. I'm working late at night. That's impossible. And do you want to know what takes the biggest hit? That bottom section. Because the next thing you know, you aren't eating healthy anymore, you don't work out, and you definitely don't want to serve because you become selfish, and it's all about you, and it's all about what you have to do and what you have to do to make the next thing right. And so what you've done is that you've sacrificed the things that bring you the most joy at the altar of your everything else. And all of a sudden, isn't it interesting that you have a very skinny frame with very skinny margin and very little joy? And it's because we made the decision to compromise on what God says will actually bring you the most joy, that being God's spouse and our kids. We've compromised that. But what if we didn't have to do that? Like, what if we actually had a framework for making better decisions? Crazy. What if we started making decisions out of our priorities and not our availability? What if we said yes to some things, or I should say, what if we said no to some things so we could say yes to better things? What if we started to realize that what King Solomon said in Proverbs 16 is true? He says, there's a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. If we want our priorities to be the guide for our life, then we need to filter every decision through how do they honor God, how do they honor my spouse, how do they honor my kids, and how do they bring me the life that God would desire for me. The priority frame, it gives you the foundation to be able to make decisions from and to affirm why your family makes the decisions that they do. Because when our priorities are on a firm foundation, we can be confident in the decisions we make. On a firm foundation, you can be confident in the decisions we make. So as always, I don't just kind of say, you need to figure this out. Like, we want to help you. We want to help you as you walk with Jesus, to help him become the firm foundation of your life. Last week, for instance, we gave you a lock screen that you could put on your phone with the pyramid of priorities right on it. This week, we have another gift for you. And here's the gift. Our team has created something I think is really cool. It's a magnet, but what's interesting about this magnet is that it's kind of a two-parter. On the inside of this magnet, you'll notice that there's the pyramid. That actually pops out, and you can put that somewhere to be able to remind you. And what's left is a frame that says God, spouse, kids, and you on it. And this picture will fit a 4x6 photo, and it's magnetic, so you can put it right on the fridge, because everybody goes to the fridge. You know what I mean? Like, you just put that thing on there. And if you'd prefer to be able to download your own picture, you can do that, crossroadsgrace.org/priorities. If we only have a limited amount of these, so as you leave today, once we're out, we're out. But again, you can download and print one yourself at home if you'd like to. Crossroads Online, we didn't forget about you, though, because crossroadsgrace.org/priorities, there's a button you can click there. You can share your mailing address with us, and while supplies last, we'll be able to mail one of those to you and your family. It is one per family, because you need one per family. But something else fun that we've got set up for you is on the back lawn, we have got bounce houses and food trucks and all kinds of crazy fun stuff. It was so fun just to hang out after service. But actually back there, we also have a photo booth, a photo spot that kind of looks like this little grid pattern that we have, and you could take your family photo there. Above it, it's going to say My Priorities, and you can have that and then download that or print that off at home, plug it into your frame when you get home. See, we just want to help you. We want to help you remember these priorities, and however we can do that, we're here to help you guys. But as we kind of finish this out, and as we come to this time where we each week try to remember Jesus at communion, I want to show you something. The Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, which is the worst name for a baseball team ever, can we just agree on that? Like, oh my goodness, right? How many more words do you need? Anyway, so the Angels, they have a starting pitcher. His name is Noah Syndergaard, and his nickname is Thor. So he long flowing hair, just kind of crazy. But oddly enough, Noah, came from the same small town that my wife did in Iowa. Yeah, crazy. But he's a phenom when it comes to pitching. And before he had Tommy John surgery a couple years ago, he was able to throw 100 miles an hour well into the ninth inning consistently. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, I could hit that. No, you could not. You could not hit that. You would pee your pants. There's no doubt. Believe me, okay, that is crazy stuff, all right? But before Noah was with the Angels, he played for the New York Mets. And after a game, his catcher, his name was Kevin Polecki, he shared a picture of what it was like to catch Noah and to block a 100-mile-an-hour fastball that was in the dirt. And here's what he shared. Take a look at this, okay? It came in so hard that the ball hit his necklace, and it made an impression on his skin. But isn't it interesting what it's in the shape of? A cross. He literally now has the cross imprinted on his chest. So my friends, as you look back on this series and you analyze your life, my question to you is, what has made an impression on you? Was it your schedule? Was it some things that you were putting pressure on that you didn't need to put pressure on? Was it your need to say, maybe it's your need to say no to some things? And while I hope that that's some of the things that you wrestle with, can I tell you, my deepest hope is that you ask yourself this question: how has God been impressed on me more? How am I going to let Jesus be impressed not just on my life, but on my actual heart? That is the most important thing when it comes to your priorities. Is Jesus impressed on my life so much that I couldn't even dream about doing anything other than exactly what he told me to do? Paul's words in Philippians chapter 4 are beautiful. It says that, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, I love this, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Guys, it's not just about knowing what to do, it's about putting it into practice. It's about doing something with what God has called you to do. That's what it's all about. It's about doing something with what God has called you to do. It's not enough just to be able to hear it. Because in fact, Jesus, if you remember in Matthew chapter 7, he says that if you do that, right, if you choose not to follow me, then actually you're foolish. You're a foolish man. And I'll tell you that the world's going to think that you're foolish. That when you start following your life this way, when you start saying it's God, spouse, kids, and everything else, can I tell you, the world's going to look at you and say, that's crazy. But you're not worried about the world. Instead of being foolish, be faithful. Prioritize your life with God first. And when we do that, it means that we choose to follow him with all that we do. Jesus would actually throw down the gauntlet even more in Luke chapter 14. He would say, and whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. So when we prioritize our life with God first, it means that each and every day, each and every decision, each and everything that we do is a choice to pick up our cross and to follow him, knowing that only in him will we find life. So do not walk out of here today and say to yourself, that's a pretty good message. I might do that someday. Don't say, you know, when things slow down, I'll try that. Again, I'll remind you, remember Jesus' words earlier. He says, whoever hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man. I'll say it again, don't be foolish. Be faithful. Be faithful to what God is calling you to do. Put God first in your home. Put God first in your finances. Put God first in your time, in your talent. Put God first in your marriage. Put God first with your kids. Put God first in your life. And when you do that, don't think of it as like checking off, oh, I'm being a really good person today. No. Check it off and say, no, I'm being a disciple of Jesus. I'm impressing Jesus on my life. That is what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. It means that we are choosing life by dying to all of our other things in our life. Because we know that only in him is found our greatest joy, our greatest meaning. And so it's a choice to prioritize our life to make him number one. To be marked by him. To never, ever look back. Make God number one. It'll always be worth it. Heavenly Father, God, I lift this up to you right now. I pray for the men and women that are within the sound of my voice, whether in here in Manteca or in the lobby or perhaps even joining us online from around the country, around the world. I pray right now that we would be the type of people that would hear and do, that we would not just be hearers of the word, but doers of the word, and that our lives would be marked by more than just church attendance, but they would be marked by discipleship, that we would be in our communities, we would be in our world, trying to connect more and more people to Jesus and being a light to them. But God, we need you. There's no way we can do it without you. And so, Father, I pray right now as we hear the words of the song, as we remember you, as we prepare our hearts for a time of communion, would you instill in us a sense of peace and love and devotion of you that is uncomparable. I pray, Father, right now for all those within the sound of my voice, that today would be the day that they reorder themselves, they reorder their life for God, spouse, kids, and everything else, so we can be marked by you and become your disciple. We remember you now. It's in Jesus' beautiful name we pray.